What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the Aspect Podcast Network, the home of the Valyrian voice. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below to be the first to listen to our weekly reactions and other shows from the Aspect, including X-Men, Star Wars, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and more.
What were your reactions to this week's episode? Essentially the finale.
Y- um, I fear that this season is a miss. On the whole, I just saw someone else say they described this episode as a 70-minute trailer, and that's not inaccurate, which is a big bummer. I mean, yeah, so this finale, titled "The Queen Who Ever Was," is what the HBO site says currently. Um, Episode 8, which we've talked about a couple of times, them deciding to go with 8 episodes instead of 10, which I think definitely can confirm not the best decision, and also not the best use of time over those 8 episodes either. So yeah, there was a lot that I think this finale needed to do to be a satisfying conclusion to a lot of meandering time that we've spent this season, and it just didn't really do that. I it was really wild too, because at the beginning of the episode, so also I feel we haven't said this every episode, I feel like it should go without saying, but spoiler warning for the episode and the season from here on out, just in case you haven't watched or you're concerned about that. But yeah, this episode, so I've been saying for weeks now that I was pretty certain that the Battle of the Gullet was going to happen in this episode. We didn't even get that. Like we straight
We
we
saw
didn't even get that.
nothing.
Yeah, we didn't even get that far, which is bonkers to me. This The way that this episode ended should have been a mid-season point for for season 2, not the ending being still even before the Battle of the Gullet, which I thought that we were going to see. But the most unbelievable part of this finale, I think, to me, is that whenever I was watching the first 10 or 20 minutes of it, the way that they were setting some things up, it felt like they're setting things up to where I was like, okay, maybe we're actually going to see something that takes place a little bit after the Battle of the Gullet happens too. And I was like, oh man, they're just about to speed run through so much stuff that I feel like they actually could expand upon. And then they didn't end up doing that. They ended up not even getting close to that point in time that I thought they were gonna hit. And so it was just the the finale was a perfect reflection of how the entire season has been in terms of pacing and just it being really weird and really off. I just don't understand how the first 20 minutes of the episode, I can feel like they're going to get to this one point in the story that is significantly far off, and then as the episode progresses you just fall ridiculously short of that. You're just so nothing happened really for this, and it's the weird thing too of not that nothing happened at all, but it's just a lot of repetition and a lot of things being kind of added or elaborated on that didn't necessarily need it. I think there were scenes in this finale that I liked, and we'll get into those. Um, there's some things I really don't know how to feel about them, and yeah, but I mean, just on the whole, I don't really get it. Very disappointed by the season. I was literally talking to someone else, and I was like, "Man, it's wild that this season of House of the Dragon has made me rethink how I feel about the entire show." Season 1 is still phenomenal and was great, but this season I'm just really conflicted on it, and not. I'm just really disappointed, which is a big bummer. Um, but yeah, how did you
You're
feel?
not wrong.
What are your initial
You're
reactions
not
to
wrong.
to
You
this
are not
finale?
wrong, man. It is so crazy how I don't want to say the entire season hinged on this episode, but it kind of felt like it did. I kind of felt like we did see Battle of the Gullet, or at least the beginnings of it. I think this season would have been good. At least it would have there would have been a payoff, you know.
Hmm.
But there wasn't. There was nothing. The entire episode is going. It's just dragging on and on and on. And I'm suddenly looking like how many minutes are left in this episode, and I think it was during this scene where they were sailing. Um, everyone was gearing up for battle, and I'm looking, and there's like 8 minutes of I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What? What are you gonna do in 8 minutes? And then
Hmm.
the scenes drag on, and we just see how where everyone ends on season 2. We don't see any battle, we don't see any action, we don't see anything at all. And it's baffling because like I said, I don't want to make it seem like this entire season hinged on one episode, but it kind of felt like it did. We saw
Yeah,
so
it
much. The pacing, you're right, the pacing was off. We saw literally more than half the season was Damon going through a bad trip.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and
I mean,
and just him and we do see payoff. We do see payoff.
mhm,
One of the very, very bright spots of this episode, maybe the only bright spot of this episode, was when Rhaenyra was heading into Harrenhal and Damien gave his little speech and all that stuff. That was a really, really good scene, despite
yeah,
everything else. So like, yeah, okay, we did see some character development. We did see a lot of it, but like it shouldn't have gone on for 4 episodes, and this shouldn't have been the way that season 2 ended. It was just ridiculous. And you're right. It's making me rethink the entire show like as a concept. I'm never a fan of spin-offs. I'm not a fan of spin-offs. I genuinely believe that there are only maybe one or two spin-offs in pop culture history that have really like truly panned out. And when I
maybe,
found out that there was a Game of Thrones spin-off, like I was in because like I love Game of Thrones, you know.
yeah,
And a show about my favorite house in the entire realm essentially being House Targaryen. I was like, okay, I'm in. And like you said, season 1 was phenomenal. I loved it. I really did. And then season 2 just I don't know. And
it's just so. It's even weirder when I know what material they're working with in the first place too, and they adapted it and did it so well in the first season, and they made changes or added things that aren't there in the book because, as we've talked about, of how loose and not specific the book is in sections, and so it gives the show the room to do that, to play with that and to add things. That's what made it so enjoyable still as a new thing, even still having read the book, because it's able to give a lot more there in that way. And that was really cool. And it was handled really well in the first season. I know not everyone agrees on that point. There are a lot of people that don't like some of the changes that were made and all of that. But I think on the whole, the first season did it very, very well. This season feels like it's done a lot of that expansion in kind of just not necessarily meaningless, but not the best way and not the best use of its time. And it's just weird to see. It just makes it, you're like, oh, this is kind of like just not great. And I think it's just exacerbated by the fact that it is held to such a high expectation too, like just in general. Like I think of, Game of Thrones or the first season of House of Dragon. I'm like, oh, this is just like one of my favorite things, right? I just expect it to be at that level. And so when this is not a terrible show, like it's not, it's still good, but I'm just like, ugh, I want
could have
more
been
or
so much
expect
more.
more. Yeah, or like I don't know, it's just disappointing in some areas. That makes it all the more disappointing, I think. And then yeah, I just don't like the last like 3 minutes of this episode were straight up just like a trail. There's just a montage that's like, oh hey, war is
It was
coming,
yeah. It
which
was
by the way, that's the season just ends the exact same way the first season does, in the fact that it's like, oh well, like get ready for war, and it's okay, okay, well, were supposed to have spent this whole first like this entire season at war, um, and like I don't know, and I also it bothers me because I don't want to be like, oh, it had no action, it was bad, because that's not how things work. It would have been cool to give more action, but at the same time, it's the way that even the non-action has been handled, and the things that have been focused on are just not. It's just like repeating the same things over and over again, just having characters do the same things over and over again, and not really feeling like we're making any progress in a meaningful way. Is even outside of action is just not the best. Um, But yeah, I think this finale did have bright spots though. There was a couple moments that I really liked. One I'm not sure about, and then the rest of it just kind of happened.
No, you brought up a great point though. The last 3 minutes were essentially like just wallpaper material, honestly. Just take a
Yeah,
screenshot off your
I mean, it
phone
looked
and
great.
you have your
Like
next
they,
wallpaper. Yeah, it looks fantastic,
yeah,
but
I
context
mean, it was
wise,
fantastic.
just nothing,
The
you
show,
know?
the show is shot incredibly and incredibly well throughout the entire season. It looked gorgeous, um, but just a lot of the story stuff was definitely lacking.